Hey guys, Wolfie here and welcome back to the channel. As always, the usual disclaimer, any opinion here is mine and mine alone. Now this is RWBY Volume 9 Revisited. Now, a few things here and there before I get into the meat and potatoes of this section of the video. First and foremost, the usual disclaimer, any opinion here is mine and mine alone. That's number one. Number two, this will be multiple recording sessions, meaning that I will not go over the entire volume in one go. Number three, for each chapter, it's probably going to be over the course of several days, considering the news evolving. Rooster Teeth, they're shutting down. It should be either April or May that we finally get to see the company shut down after 21 years. And I will go into like certain aspects of my opinion on the matter tied to RWBY, like throughout each recording session, so it's going to be a little bit stuff here and there, so please bear with me. That's number three. Number four, I'm probably going to go into like each recording session, the name of the chapter, or something close to it, in case my pronunciation is way off. Now for Volume 9, Chapter 1, it is a place of particular concern. If you guys remember, there was a timed exclusive with Crunchyroll, and I have to reiterate that because last year Crunchyroll had a timed exclusivity deal with Rooster Teeth over RWBY. Now I won't be surprised in the future we see more exclusivity like elsewhere for RWBY or other content that was originally on Rooster Teeth. So we just got to keep our eyes and ears like open in the sense of what news as they come. Now regarding the decision for Rooster Teeth to make sure the extended scene from Volume 9 to be available for just first members, I feel it's a very bad decision due to the timing of Rooster Teeth shutting down. So that's a very bad decision. It should have been available for everybody, regardless if they're a first member or not, considering the financial situation they're going through right now. And a bit of a side note, but it is related, that the Rooster Teeth store, whatever they have going on their sales on their website now, no refunds. All sales are final. And like I said, it's relevant, because again, Rooster Teeth is shutting down after 21 years. So that's on that. So regarding the revisiting, because it's like I just want make sure I have a more clear head in the sense of like, has my opinion changed, that sort of thing. And I'm going to go through each episode individually, so that way you guys get to see what's exactly going on. So you may be probably see different sections where I'm wearing a hoodie or a different colored shirt, so on and so forth. So for Volume 9, Chapter 1, I believe this is called A Place of Particular Concern. Let me grab my notes, and I'm correct. So it's a place of particular concern. So I had to watch a couple of aspects of it, a little bit more carefully. Now, as an overall like episode, chapter, whatever you want to call it, my opinion on Chapter 1 of Volume 9 as a whole, it remains unchanged. However, I became uninterested in it kind of quickly. And it just felt a little bit worse, watching it another time, because it left so much to be desired. I mean, granted, you're talking like the beginning of each volume. It's supposed to be like everybody getting hyped up, but it's like seeing it on Rooster Teeth's website, I honestly felt uninterested. And it's really heartbreaking for me to say that. Now, regarding certain aspects of, I think I mentioned this a little earlier, that the whole thing with Volume 9 on the Rooster Teeth website, you could actually bind the entire volume in one go. I simply won't do that because I simply don't have time to do that. And this first part, the first recording being Easter Sunday, I actually return to work tomorrow because last week I was doing my week of paid time off. So I return to work tomorrow. So there's Honestly, no way of me doing that without risking my job. Now, for those of you who are non-first members, it's just like there are adverts you gotta watch, that sort of thing. What I noticed, it's minimal on my end thus far. That could change. Just a bit of a heads up on that. But there are a couple of things I had to give it a once I heard some certain aspects of it another time, I'm like, I had to be like, okay, it's not so much me reading into it a little bit more, but it had me thinking in other directions. Now, for those of you who remember, we do know that later on in Volume 9, Blake and Yang become canon. However, I feel we're probably going to be seeing a bit of a repeat of some sorts. Now, what repeat am I referring to now? We're going to leave RWBY out of this one, and for good reason. Now, if you remember the whole thing with that intro to Volume 9, where it's just like you have Yang and Blake on opposite sides, Weiss in the center, it's just like, it kind of reminds me of the picture from Team Stark, because on a romantic level, like the whole thing, if you remember Team Stark, it's like Raven was initially with Tai Yang. And then Tai Yang eventually went to Summer. So with that, we know that the third position in the team name, it's Raven. And why I say this is because I noticed it's towards the end of chapter 1, I do feel there is a confirmation of tensions, and granted, it's not sexual, but it's tensions between Weiss and Yang. Now, why do I think there's some tensions between those two characters? Well, if you think about the whole reunion scene back in Volume 5, Chapter 4, it's like Weiss wasn't expecting Yang to be where she was at, and Yang wasn't expecting to see Weiss. It's like the least likely person. Now, that's this. And then you have to think about back in Volume 1, where it's like, Weiss and Yang, it's like, I don't think they really got along. And I mention this because Volume 5, Chapter 8, you have Weiss very much saying that Weiss and Yang are not close. And you have to remember one of the Team Coffee novels, which, by the way, those are canon to the whole RWBY universe, that Yang, of all people, has thought of Weiss as being an elitist. Which I feel that we're seeing unresolved tensions between Weiss and Yang, and this could be pushing Blake away from Yang at some point in the future. And the thing is with Weiss and Blake, they understand each other more so and in other ways. Meaning that they both come from backgrounds where it's like, you could question the tactics of the people that they had to deal with. For Blake, it was the White Fang. Weiss, she does company, and her father, Jacques, who, by the way, is dead as of Volume 8. But, again, we don't know anything beyond Volume 9 because, again, we still don't know anything and everything tied to Volume 10 and beyond, due to the whole thing with Rooster Teeth. But like I said, I do feel that the whole thing when Weiss was describing Yang, I believe she said it in a way that is showcasing unresolved tensions. Granted, it's not sexual, but it could really drive the team apart, and that could push Blake away from Yang and into the arms of either RWBY or Weiss in quote-unquote retaliation. Now, I do want to emphasize here for Team Stark, because, again, the whole thing with, like, one person going to one other on the team and then going to another person on the same team, that person drives the team. I mean, the person who initiated whatever is the reason why the teams fell apart. Now, I think Blake could very well be realizing she could be the reason why RWBY is falling apart as a team. Because, granted, we know, like, towards, like, late Volume 9, Blake and Yang become canon. But you're talking about the conflict between, like, evolving Yang and Weiss, and then the whole thing with Yang and RWBY. Meaning that if you think about the the tales where the characters were originating, like the original source, you have to think about Goldilocks. It's like she splits. It's like she doesn't make contact with anybody ever again. Or alternatively, it's like she gets away, but it's like she and Blake eventually split up, but they don't go back to being a couple because Blake has moved on, so has Yang. And the whole thing with chapter 1, I think I'm starting to really see, the tensions are really there. And another piece of evidence where I had to really think about it of the unresolved tensions kind of ties with Yang and RWBY. Because there's that line where Yang says, you weren't, it was along the lines of, you weren't supposed to be here. Meaning that it kind of shows Yang's true colors in the sense of RWBY on the realm of being a part of a team of huntsmen, I should say. And it's just like, I think that was like the starter of downing everything about RWBY. The fact that certain things don't get questioned, certain things do. And once we get to volume 9, chapter 8 revisited, I will probably go into that a little bit more. And but like I said, it's like I do feel that this is where a lot of the tensions are really starting to show. I mean, granted, we do know that Blake and Yang are canon. But when it comes to script writing and the unknown for after volume 9, everything is open. Meaning that the relationship between Blake and Yang are open-ended. Meaning that people can break them up. And being someone who writes fan fiction since 2017, I mean, this is my seventh year writing it. I've been reading it for like at least a year or two more than that. So it's like knowing the whole realm about writing, like execution of varying things, is that if you leave things open-ended, that means a writer can break couples up. Now, so once we get to like further into the volume, I mean, I'm probably gonna be like going into like, do I think certain things played a role, that sort of thing. But so that's gonna be for future chapters of the volume when I revisit them. But just to do a bit of a quick recap on this, like as a standalone, my opinion on the episode has not changed. I mean, it still left a lot to be desired, and a little bit more now that I caught it like with a more careful eye. I feel that there are tensions between the team that needs to be resolved. And for Yang to say to RWBY along the lines of, you weren't supposed to be here, I feel that there may be some degree of resentment. And I think the tensions are probably going to heat up should they ever return the Remnant. And I'm saying it like this on purpose because, again, I've seen the whole volume on Crunchyroll. But it's just, I mean, I do feel we're going to be needing some serious talks here between the team if the team is to survive as a team. Because I feel that the team is about to be heading to Splitsville once again. And we're talking... And it's just like the original artwork for the volume 9 sense of the poster. You have two people looking at each other, Blake and Yang, but you have RWBY and Weiss looking towards the viewer. Now, because like they're not in the same wavelength, which I feel it's like a catalyst for them splitting up once again. I think RWBY as a team is going to be heading to Splitsville once again. So once I come back, we'll be discussing chapter 2, revisiting it. Hey guys, Wolvie, this is the second portion of the video. Remember, this is going to be a very long video. Now, this is Volume 9, Chapter 2 Revisited. So, picking up from where I left off, and just a reminder, any opinion here is mine and mine alone. So, we're going to jump into Chapter 2 right away, and I'm not going to be playing any games. So, for those who may have not remembered, the title of this particular chapter is called Altercation at the Auspicious Auction. This is basically where Yang gets her right arm back, so to speak. Now, what I'm going to do here from here on out for the revisited video, starting at this point, I'm just going to give you the number of adverts I saw because I'm not paying for first membership, considering what's happening with Rooster Teeth in the near future. So the number of adverts I caught for chapter 2 is at 4. Like I said earlier, that number will change throughout, so please bear with me. Now, has my opinion changed on chapter 2 from a year ago? I'm gonna check my notes to be a good girl. Here's the thing. So the very things I mentioned here, like when I did this a year ago, there are tensions in the team, and now looking at this a little bit slightly more clearly, I feel that not only are there tensions between Weiss and Yang, I'm starting to see some with Ruby and Blake. And if you guys remember that whole art for the volume, you see Yang and Blake are looking at each other, whereas Ruby and Weiss are looking at the viewer, meaning that they're not on the same wavelength. And I feel that if we do have a continuation, I think the tensions within the team need to be addressed. That is an above all. Because it's like, you see, the thing is with Ruby, she's trying, she's not really, I think she's starting to show signs of, her not being her usual self. Weiss, feeling in the moment of despair. And Ruby trying to reassuring her that. And I'm not even sure Blake and Yang have anything to say about, the whole ordeal with, Atlas, like that last fight at the end of Volume 8. And the interaction between Weiss and Yang, I mean, it's like, I think they're civil at best at this point. And it's really sad because, again, I feel that there are tensions that the team really need to address. They really need to have a good heart-to-heart. It's like, instead of the writing and the execution overall, I'm just like, it's just like, it doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel sincere. I'm not really moved. Now that I'm looking at this, like, another time and a bit more of a clearer head. Now, regarding the realm of Ever After, I do feel that Blake will probably be the key here for the team to get out. So it's pretty much, Blake's moment to shine. But like I said, with that being said, the fact that I do feel that with tensions with Ruby here, she's probably going to be having some beef with Blake at some point. I feel it's coming. And it's just, it's kind of sad, the team, I feel, is about to split, with after Vacchio or all that stuff. And regarding Bumblebee, I think there are some degree of tensions between Yang and Blake. Again, for those of you, we have to remind ourselves that Volume 9, Chapter 6, I am getting ahead, but I watched this on Crunchyroll, so I know what I'm talking about. But, and a bit of a spoiler, Yang and Blake do become canon. However, even beforehand, there are some tensions between these two. So if Yang may be the root cause of the issues of the team. So, the fact that, yes, we all know they become canon, I don't feel they're going to remain canon. And the fact that the writers didn't really mention anything about this, like, for Endgame, it's like it does leave the door open for Yang and Blake to break up. And then, with Goldilocks, where Yang's based off of, it's like they don't go back to being a couple if they do break up. Because of the varying tensions, within the team that Yang is actually causing. So I think this is more like exposing varying things with Yang. Now, on a side note, on the epilogue, I will be watching it on my own, because I noticed on Twitter X where Carrie Shawcross mentioned, that's gonna be, everything's gonna be free, due to what's going on with Rooster Teeth. It's gonna be free. I will be watching it on my own time. I will mention here, though, that you can find it on YouTube if you look hard enough. And regarding that, I'm gonna go into the epilogue in a little bit more detail when I get there. That's gonna be the very end of the video. Now, as my opinion on the episode as a whole, sadly, it has not changed, and I think it's a little bit worse now that I'm looking at it a second time. Because I do have here in my notes, it's just like the overall timing, the overall pacing is just like, it feels off and not in a good way. So it's like, yeah, it's sad for me to say that. If there is a redeeming factor for this chapter, it's towards the very end, where RWBY gives a really heartfelt and sincere tribute to Penny while throwing shade at the other 3 members of the team. And I feel that the shade is more at Blake and Yang than at Weiss. Because I feel that Weiss is staying true to her promise to RWBY back in Volume 1, because Weiss was like, hey, I'm going to be the best teammate you'll ever have. And I think Weiss's actions are proving that. And that's that on that. So once I come back, it will be Chapter 3. Hey guys, Wolfie here. This is Volume 9, Chapter 3 Revisited. As I did in the other sections of this video so far, the usual disclaimer, any opinion here is mine and mine alone. This is Rude, Red, and Royal, revisiting this particular chapter in the volume. Now, the number of adverts I've seen here are at least 5. And I do want to mention here with the adverts, it could be repeating adverts, so just keep that in mind when you watch this on the Rooster Teeth website. So, the initial opinion I had on it, I'm going to check my notes really quickly. So, there's a lot going on. It's just a matter of like, so much and yet nothing like going on at the same time. So, which is pretty much the general consensus of my initial opinion on the matter. Because, you have Weiss, Blake, and Yang, they get small, they stay small for a while. And, so you have here Little, helping RWBY in varying ways, so on and so forth. When it comes to the dust and the firearm aspect of her weapon, she runs out, meaning that she ignored, Weiss's warning on the matter. And I think, Weiss, I do feel now that Weiss is holding some degree of information from everybody, in a sense. And I kind of remember mentioning a little while ago that Weiss and Yang, unresolved tensions, and no one's speaking up about that. I do feel, the whole thing when Weiss used to Blake's weapon in Volume 8, that's where a bunch of the bullets ran out, so that's, so to speak. So you have here an angrier RWBY, I think there's certain signs there, but I don't think the rest of the team are picking it up on it. I think Weiss might be the only one, so that's pretty much the whole gist. And the whole thing with like the introduction of Curious Cat was really subtle, and then comes out in the end. And then the thing is with the volume so far, even revisiting it, it's like, I think Blake might be the key for the group to get out. I mean, it's just the four of them at this point. So the whole thing with Neo, same thing. I mean, so that's a bit of a lot, but nothing going on at the same time. So here's my initial opinion on the chapter changed since. Not at all. Another thing here, and the whole thing with Blake, you're not really seeing a whole lot. Could be revealing hints at who within the team wants the team to split up completely at the end, which is something that's not surprising. But part of this, like I was saying in earlier parts of this video, I'm going to go into other aspects of Rooster Teeth and RWBY, mentioning, their downfall. So that way, once we get to the end of this video, it all makes sense. So there are varying people where it's like, they used to be, yeah, RWBY no matter what. Now they're starting to really see things for what it is. It's like they're getting more skeptical. Now, Hero, hey, he's been one of those content creators where it's like, he used to be really pro RWBY with all his heart, all that stuff, and then I noticed, like, since around volume 7, it's like he's starting to have a bit of a change of tune, which is pretty much developing a sense of, like, the consistency and as well as the consistency of the writing and the writing overall and execution of Bumblebee, that sort of thing. It's just like people have been getting critical. Now for the Epilogue extension, I know there are a growing number of people who are like doing their reactions to it. I also want to briefly mention here there are a growing number of people that I'm looking into where it's like they're saying their 2 cents on the fall of Rooster Teeth. But I want to mention here for a moment because it's like this person gets it. He absolutely gets it, and he is definitely worth a sub on his YouTube channel. Now, I'm gonna bring attention to the comment section when he was talking about RWBY and the fall of Rooster Teeth. Some of the comments were like, I had to really like look at it and like think about it, and some of those comments actually make sense. Because granted, they're negative or critical, but it's like some of the staffing at Rooster Teeth should have seen this coming. When certain people are leaving, it's just like it's a matter of time where the rest of the dominoes fall. And it took the fall of Rooster Teeth, that announcement, for people to really see that. So with that, it's not going to be a long this section is not going to be that long because, again, I'm not 100%. I mean, I've been puking up some mucus a little while ago. And I do have to get ready for work. But to recap this section of the video, my opinion on the episode has not changed at all. It's like too much and nothing at the same time. The number of efforts I've seen are at least 5. I do have to watch the chapter 4, get it in order for me to get a good, proper assessment of the remaining chapters. And the Kerry Shaw Cross, I remember him mentioning on Twitter X that the Epilogue and Beyond aspect will be free, so it's like there's gonna be efforts on that. The Beyond, I'm a little torn as to whether or not I'll be seeing that, but I will be looking at the extended Epilogue on my own time. So with all of that, I'll be back at a later point for Volume 9, Chapter 4. Hey guys, Wolvie here, and this is Volume 9, Chapter 4, Revisited. Now, the usual disclaimer, I'm going to put this in each and every part of this video. Any opinion here is mine and mine alone. Now, we have here a cat most curious. Now, it's been a few days since I've recorded, and here's the thing, I was sick for a few days. So between Chapter 3 Revisited and this part, I've been sick. It was a quick but nasty bout with nausea. I am over it. I just want to make sure I'm rested and recovered before I started recording again, so it's been a few days, so just a bit of an FYI. And somebody wants to say hi. Yeah, Sandy wants to say hi. So anyway, this is again chapter 4. My thoughts on the whole volume revisited, Rooster Teeth stuff, that sort of thing. Now, the introduction of A Cat Most Curious. This is the introduction of Curious Cat. Now, people mention here at around this time when it was first released on Crunchyroll that, Cat's supposed to be on the side of the good guys. Now, we don't really know if that's the case because certain things here or there. Now, we're going to jump into the whole thing with the herbalist and the quote-unquote test. Now, I feel this is where the second trial by fire for RWBY begins. Now, we have to remember, Weiss, Blake, and Yang have their weapons. RWBY is still without hers, and her weapon being Crescent's Rose. Now, if you look at the quote-unquote trial by fire, I do feel now that this is affecting the team, If you remember the trial by fire around volume 6, it's about Ruby's silver eye abilities. We have her resemblance, but she also has the thing with her silver eyes. You really want to be in this video, buddy? But anyway, the whole thing with the trial by fire, I think it's about identity. It's like who you really are. So if you look at somebody like RWBY, does she feel like she's really a huntress? Whereas the other three here, Weiss, Blake, and Yang, they are. And we have to remember, all throughout this particular chapter / episode, whatever you want to call it, they are still short in size because of what happened in chapter 3, where the Red Prince shrinks them for the chess game. And certain things with Curious Cats, like, we simply don't know if the Ever After that the team is in is really a sequel to that particular story, or if it's a prequel. We simply do not know, because there is a hint where it's just like you go to this place, you revert back to something. So it's like that's a bit of a hint. So it's like, I feel that this is a bit of some degree of time travel, in my personal opinion. So on that note, has my opinion changed on this particular chapter? Sadly, no, but there is a small amount of hope, because I do feel there's certain aspects here, makes certain things in the upcoming chapters a little more sense. So, but it's a bit of a time will tell sort of thing. So, I am leaning towards, when I get back from the gym later on tonight, to record everything for chapter 5. And like I said, I've been sick for the past few days. I was throwing up some stuff earlier this week. It's just my own doing. And you're hearing Sandy meowing his tail off as I'm recording this part, so you may hear him meowing. So I do remember here in chapter 4, Curious Cat does mention the parfait. But it's like, we don't know yet what parfait, will have them return to their natural size. So, I'm looking at my notes here. Let me pause this real quick. Okay, so I did look at my notes a little bit more thoroughly. Now, Curious Cat kind of hints at Bumblebee becoming canon, because there's a line. I really didn't pay close attention to the line the first time, but I caught it again, and the line goes, they're spoken for, and it came from Curious Cat. So I think he's referring to Bumblebee, meaning Blake and Yang. And it's it's and the way he said it was he wasn't thrilled. He's not thrilled that that they've spoken for. Which, I mean, if you look at some characters at this point and in the remainder of the volume, it's just like, whose side are they really on? I mean, is this a bit of a hint of a potential team split? We don't know. Because we have to remember, according to Tai Yang in Volume 4, Raven was the reason why Team Stark split up. Now, it's probably going to come down to either Blake or Yang to realize it's like, if they do get together, it's just like, how will people see them? And are they really meant to be together in sense of like, with splitting up Team RWBY? And another thing I do want to point out for this particular chapter is that I do feel there is some major tensions coming between Weiss and Yang. Now, I'm going to go back to that whole test with Team has with the herbalist. Now, when you go to Yang's, like, when you see Yang, like, coughing, like, she sees her Volume 1 through 3 self. And Yang only blurts out the names of 2 people, Blake and RWBY. She never says Weiss's name in that. So, because of that, I honestly feel that there are tensions still existing for Weiss and Yang. I don't think they're on the same page. And I feel that, in addition, if you remember the cover art for Volume 9, where Blake and Yang are looking at each other, Weiss and RWBY looking at the viewer, it's like, that's another hint right there. That gives out the hint in this particular part of the volume, where Yang never says Weiss's name when she's looking for people. She only says the names of Blake and RWBY, but she never reveals Weiss. Meaning that I feel there's some tensions that are coming up, about to come to a head, and I think these two need to really squash it. And another thing that kind of supports this is from Volume 8, that's later on, where Yang reunites with her team, and the type of hugs are like differing like values. And it's just really sad, it's like, to have noted it. And I feel that's going to be a reason why either the team splits up, Blake and Yang break up, or even both. Or, alternatively, another reason. We simply don't know yet, but because the whole thing with Yang, I think she has issues with Weiss. If you guys remember the first Teen Coffee novel, first Teen Coffee novel does have RWBY as a teen featured, but it's like the flashbacks, that sort of thing. And in the first novel, Yang does view Weiss as an elitist. So I think we're seeing some aspects of that, and I won't be surprised if this continues on, that finally gets addressed, and it needs to be addressed if RWBY is to remain a team. Because at this point, Volume 9, Chapter 4, I feel this is going to cause the entire team to split up at the very moment. And with that poster art for Volume 9, again, to reiterate, Blake, Yang looking at each other, Weiss, RWBY looking at the viewer. And if people, like, can't catch the hint, it's a matter of, like, is it really worth being in a relationship with somebody? Whereas it could come at a really big cost. And the whole thing from Chapter 1 of Volume 9, where Yang tells RWBY, you weren't supposed to be here. So it's like, this is bad. To see some degree of confirmation where Yang and Weiss are not really buddies. They're teammates, but they're nowhere near close. And even though Weiss has been upfront about that back in Volume 5, Chapter 8, we haven't heard anything on that matter from Yang. We never hear it. We still have yet to hear it. So hopefully after I get home from the gym, I will catch you guys with Volume 9, Chapter 5. Hey guys, Wolvie here. This is revisiting Volume 9, Chapter 5. And the name of this particular episode is The Parfait Predicament. Now, first and foremost, the disclaimer, any opinion here is mine and mine alone. I most likely forgot to mention the number of adverts in Chapter 4. Fortunately for me, the number of adverts I noticed in Chapter 4 is the same in Chapter 5 here, and that number is 3. So, 3 in Chapter 4, 3 in Chapter 5. So, we're just going to jump straight into it from here. Now, did my overall opinion change from Chapter 4 to Chapter 5? No. Now, there's a couple of things here. Is that I believe this is a little more of a continuation of the Trial by Fire in sense of like identity. Meaning that are you really a huntress? Now, one item here is like a female individual that RWBY meets. Some people may think that I'm referring to the teapot lady. No, I'm referring to like a tree-like figure. So it kind of gives a hint on like how Team RWBY would probably have to go back to Remnant. And I think RWBY's like the first one. Now, I noticed in this particular chapter, Yang's finally heeding aspects of Raven's advice to ask questions. And question the things that she feels is sus. Now, I feel that the reason why RWBY was quote-unquote protected from the whole test in Chapter 4 is because you have to remember she still does not have Crescent Rose yet. Sense of being reminded of, the sense of like, if you catch my drift. Now, I feel that Little is reminding RWBY of varying friends of hers. We don't know who. Now, regarding to the whole Ever After story, it's just like there's a lot of he said, she said, and simply putting it, we don't know if it's the prequel or the sequel, based on the information from Curious Cat. Now, I'm looking at my notes here, so bear with me, and the whole thing with the debut of the Rested Knight, who I believe turns out to be Jean. Yet they have the reaction from both of these two individuals here, Blake and Weiss. Now, I kind of bring this up is because Blake's reaction, I think it kind of shows a hint on things with her and Yang. And if you see something like that kind of early on, it kind of makes Yang question things between herself and Blake. And before I go any further, when I said after I get home from the gym, I meant the next day. Meaning that yesterday was Chapter 4, today is Chapter 5, so I probably will do another one later on today before I go to the gym tonight for Chapter 6. So that way, I'm not as far behind as possible. So I'm going to check the time here. I'm going to do, it's not going to be a long section here. But overall, my opinion on this has yet to change. I do want to add here that RWBY sees like her mother's weapon, her mother being Summer Rose. I believe it's an axe. So, that's how then you have here, Neo shows up on where RWBY is within Ever After, so it's like, that's that on that. So I think there's just some more questions than answers. That's all I got for this section of the video. Hey guys, I am back. This is revisiting Volume 9, Chapter number 6, for the I'm going to say this going forward for perhaps the remainder of this video, and it's kind of important for context. So there are at least 2 sets of adverts. Here for chapter 6, it's going to be the number I called was 6 on the dot. And again, it's broken down to 2 sets, so that's it on that. So overall, my opinion hasn't changed since. No, I am going to add a couple of other things to this, just to be fair. Regarding the peak viewership of this particular part in Volume 9, this is where the peak was reached when, and by the way, I'm going to refer to this particular chapter as Confessions in the Clouds, because the word that comes in there is kind of hard for me to pronounce. I'm going to butcher it, so I'm just going to do it my way. So it's Confessions in the Clouds, so that sort of thing. So basically, this is where Bumblebee becomes canon. However, I had to really look at some dialogue a little bit more carefully. The whole thing with Yang saying, "I think I love you," and the speed and delivery of Blake's "I love you too," it doesn't sound sincere. And this is a bit of an execution part where it's like, I don't feel it's genuine. Because saying the phrase, "I think I love you," the word "think" in that phrase, and for pardon me for nitpicking, but it doesn't sound Yang is confident about this. And the speed of Blake saying "I love you too" is a little bit fast. It sounds kind of rushed. Now, though, there are some controversies about this particular episode. And one of them, I'm not so sure, I've yet to see the comments on this on the Rooster Teeth website, but it is clear as day on the Crunchyroll website, where it's like, people were mentioning that anyone who doesn't support Bumblebee are homophobic, which caused a righteous uproar, because you're talking about fictional characters. It's like, you can't really say something like, "Oh, you're homophobic," over a difference of an opinion on fictional characters. And there were some comments on Twitter X for people who, yes, they ship Bumblebee, but they were not for Bumblebee becoming canon, which kind of rings in true in the sense of my statement saying that, talking about a ship that doesn't quite read the room. It's like, yeah, people like, ships, but do they necessarily want it to become canon? No, not everybody. And another thing that kind of comes along, now I was thinking about this for a while, but not really, was that the whole meeting between Barbara, Aaron, Miles, Carrie, back predating Volume 1, where it's just like Carrie said "no, not yet" to Barbara and Aaron's inquiry. Now, this is a major writing and execution flaw of the ship. Because if you say "no, not yet" to a pairing becoming canon, it's like, or introducing them as such, because Barbara and Aaron have the right idea, saying, "Hey, can we introduce them as this?" And then you have Carrie saying "no, not yet." It's like, it's a very much, it's like a bit of an execution flaw there. Now, the whole thing with Bumblebee, before it became canon, and I do have to reiterate this because this part I was actually in attendance to see. Now, Bumblebee was promoted quite heavily at any convention where Barbara and Aaron were confirmed guesting. One of those instances being the Chicago Comic and Entertainment Expo 2020. This was the end of February to the beginning of March of that year. Now, you guys are wondering about pandemic COVID. Now, C2E2 2020 was before the lockdown. That is important to know. It was before the lockdown in the U.S. And like I said, I was in attendance at C2E2 2020. And I remember clear as day, both of their booths have prints of Blake and Yang holding hands. That's seen from late Volume 6. So it looks like they were probably trying to say it's canon before it really was at that point. But you have to remember, that's just my opinion. My nose is kind of itchy, so that's another thing for another day. But anyway, the overall execution and writing for Bumblebee, it's not good. The fact that Yang said, "I think I love you," doesn't sound confident. Blake's "I love you too" doesn't sound sincere. And this could prove some dialogue for Volume 7 correct. Now, what I'm referring to from Volume 7 is the discussion between Nora and Ren. They were talking about Blake and Yang. And then Ren's reply was one of them will not reciprocate the feelings in actuality. Now, pertaining to that, and looking at Volume 9, Chapter 6, I still think there is a possibility that Yang truly will not reciprocate Blake's feelings. Because "I think I love you" doesn't sound confident. The "I love you too" from Blake sounded rushed and a little insincere. Considering where now, the whole thing with the whole potential reunion with a son is going to be like, make things conflicted for Blake. And then certain things coming down the line for Ruby, it's just like, certain things may come up with Yang instead of her feelings for Blake. And that's that on that. Hopefully I will be back tomorrow with Volume 9, Chapter 7 Revisited. That's that. I am back. This is revisiting Volume 9, Chapter number 7, Perils of Paper Houses. Now, the number of adverts here is again 2 sets. The number I call is at least 4, but if you're watching it on the website, you might want to be careful if you're going through your mobile device or on a computer. Because trying to, read, make sure you listen to certain lines, it gets a little difficult on mobile. But anyway, so, enough of that. The usual disclaimer, as always, any opinion here is mine and mine alone. And we're going to just jump straight into it. So, the overall aspect of the question, has my opinion changed? The answer is no. However, I do want to clarify certain things here and there. So, regarding the warning before the episode, so you're probably going to be seeing a warning for sure for Chapter 7 and Chapter 8. That's the only spoiler for Chapter 8. But Chapter 7, yes, there is a warning before the start. I mean, there may have been a warning for Chapter 6. However, I did not see that this time around the Rooster Teeth website, so that's that on that. Anyway, so a few things here and there I do want to think about regarding the whole Ruby-Jean argument that got really heated, is that I don't think John's taking responsibility for his role in what happened. Because Penny was the one in Volume 8 who asked Jean to kill her, to prevent the Winter Maiden powers from going to Cinder, as Penny wanted Winter to live. And Winter Schnee. So that's a bit on that. So it goes back to the whole thing with that argument. I don't think John's accepting the fact that he had a role to play. Now, if you guys remember in Volume 6, it was John who made some type of suggestion to get a plane to get into Atlas illegally. So, like I said, parts of this is on John, and he's not taking responsibility for it. Now, another thing I was thinking about for a little while is, for this particular chapter is, the relevance of Pyrrha to John. And I think the whole thing with what happened to Pyrrha in Volume 3, I'm trying to get my phone in a comfortable angle, so regarding with what happened to Pyrrha in Volume 3, I think John was still, grieving over it. I don't think he'll ever get over Pyrrha. And the fact that Ruby got to Pyrrha too late, so it's I'm not so sure if Ruby would have been able to do anything even if she got there in time back then. Now, regarding the Paper Villages' take on the Rested Knight / John, it's I do feel that John's not telling the entire story. But they all know that Curious Cat's not telling the entire story either. Now, regarding that, regarding the viewership for Volume 9 after Chapter 6, it's like it went down. Now, I remember seeing Barbara Dunkelman post on Twitter. I think so. I know she no longer has a Twitter X account. And I do want to mention, I think she said something along the lines, if you don't like it, don't watch. And some people may have taken that literally to where it's like they stopped watching. And I do think, I don't know for sure, I had to look it up. I do think the viewership for RWBY after Chapter 6 went back down. Because, and I do feel that the whole thing with Bumblebee becoming canon was a reason why. Now, you add that onto Barbara Dunkelman's statement saying, if you don't like it, don't watch. It's just like, it's like pretty much saying, you're asking something to get canceled before it's supposed to be. And that's something that doesn't sit well with some. Now, regarding RWBY, I think the only person that's really catching on with her and her psyche, her state of mind, state of being, Little's the only one that's really paying any attention, because Weiss, Blake, and Yang, these two more so than Weiss, really was not paying attention to like RWBY overall instead of her state of being, her state of mind. Little knew something was not right, and even John was being oblivious to it. So it's like, yeah, I think it's like there's like, I think you're starting to see signs of the team splitting. And then the whole thing with Neo's proper returns in the realm of fighting Team RWBY, all that stuff, it's just like, that was coming. And I think the reason why RWBY darted off at the end when she did is that she wanted to confront Neo one-on-one, which is ballsy and an honorable move. Because if you think about RWBY, it's like she knows what she had to do. She knows she has to confront Neo to get to the bottom of why Neo's acting the way she has been. And it is sad on the overall spectrum. Is that the leader knows exactly has a better idea what to do, even though she's not in the right mind frame for it. And it's like the others are not really paying attention to that. And they're also not paying attention to what Neo's doing to RWBY instead of like affecting her state of mind. Now, the reaction from Weiss, Blake, and Yang, along with Jean, to RWBY's sudden departure is just like, Weiss was really the only one who was really reaching out. You could probably tell Yang was not really she really couldn't do anything. Blake was a bit on the fence, which, I mean, you're talking about how do you perceive certain things, people, your actions, all that stuff. It seems that Bumblebee might be heading into a breakup already of sorts, because the way Blake is versus how Yang is just like, it's two completely different people. And if Yang's not really paying any attention, whereas Blake might start to catch it a little bit, and Weiss is really starting to really catch on, starting to put the pieces together, it's like, are they really a team? And then for John to have his back completely turned, it's like, I think there's probably going to be a bit of a clash between those two in the future. So, hopefully with the remainder of the volume, it's a bit of a wait and see on that. I'm back. I took a few minutes away. This is revisiting Chapter 8 of Volume 9. Now, the disclaimer as always, any opinion here is mine and mine alone. Has my overall opinion changed on Chapter 8? No. For adverts, it's again 2 sets, but it's only 2 for this one. I think for the Chapter 7, I actually, so it's 2 sets, so it's pretty much for Chapter 7, it was like 2 sets of adverts, the total number was 4. For Chapter 8, it's 2 sets, it's only 2, because you were actually able to see more of that particular chapter. Now, for Chapter 8 is T Admits Terrible Trouble. Now, like Chapter 7, there is a warning before the beginning of the chapter, so that's on that. Now, regarding RWBY, like the remaining members, I do feel Weiss becomes the de facto leader, because I'm noticing Weiss's mindset, like her skill set as well, is like she's probably a little more like the number 2 in the team, in the sense of like the leader, the de facto leader, so on and so forth. And this is despite Blake's knowledge of the book that they're in. So for Weiss to become the de facto leader is just like, he's probably seeing things in a new perspective. Now, the reason why I'm not putting John as a de facto leader here is because you have to think about that team's dynamics. I mean, he just like goes about, barks orders, whatever, what to do. But it's just like there's more to a leader than just shouting out orders. And I think Weiss has a overall set, in sense of like mindset, skill set, whatever have you, they makes her a little bit of the better choice to be a leader. Because it's like, I'm just trying to put it into words, and it's kind of difficult for me right now. But I was thinking more of that scene, between the 4, Weiss, Blake, Yang, and Jean, along with Juniper, who is John's steed. It's just like, the only people really trying to figure out where RWBY is John and Weiss. It's like, it's kind of telling more of a potential team split. And it's just like, the fact that Weiss and Yang are kind of like not really agreeing on the whole thing with RWBY, it's like, it kind of shows what little Yang really knows about her own sister. Because if Weiss is able to understand varying aspects of RWBY, and Blake caught a bit of a hint about Yang being rather oblivious to the matter, it's just like, we're seeing, this is pretty much, a team split and a potential breakup between Blake and Yang, because it's like, if they're not really seeing the same things on varying topics, it's like, it's a matter of time before things come to a head. And not in a good way. And the fact you have here the fight between RWBY and Neo, and we all know what RWBY does, by drinking the tea. And then Little, I freaking love that. That's probably one of the only saving graces for the entire Volume 9 is Little. The fact that Little remained loyal to RWBY. Little was not afraid to ask questions. And then RWBY was like trying to warn Little, hey, if you follow me, you're going to die. But Little was like the voice of reason. I brought a little bit, I can see a little bit of Weiss in Little. No pun intended, but yeah. And then the way everybody reacted, after RWBY drank the tea, is just like, you see that Juniper was able to break John's fall, but Weiss got up on her own. And then you have the separation, of Blake and Yang. It's just like, are we seeing a team split, like, not long after they get back to Remnant? I mean, because it's like, I think that's what's happening. And I'm like, it's something part of me cannot stop thinking about, in a sense. So, on that, another part of that fight between RWBY and Neo is just like, RWBY was doing her best to nail down on the fact that it's like, hey, don't blame me for your fuck-ups, part of my language. Don't blame me for things I didn't do. You can blame me for things that I did do, but don't go blaming things for stuff I did not do. They made those choices, not me. Now, I think that here in chapter 8, I do feel that Yang is blaming herself for a lot of stuff. But we have to remember, it's like what people choose to do. Not only to themselves, but to other people. And then I was thinking about the whole thing when the voice says RWBY. It's just like, now I'm starting to think about that a little bit more thoroughly. I will say that sounds a lot like Yang. I thought it was Summer or somebody else, but I think it's a lot like Yang. So on that, I'm going to mention Curious Cat. Now we see the Curious Cat's true intentions. RWBY spotted it pretty quickly, and it's, I mean, John was saying some stuff here and there, but not completely, but it's like, yeah. I mean, that's, yeah. And then the whole fact that Curious Cat now controls Neo, just like, it's getting kind of nuts. So, on that, once I come back, it will be revisiting Chapter 9 of Volume 9. I am back now. This is revisiting Chapter 9 of Volume 9 for RWBY. Usual disclaimer, any opinion here is mine and mine alone. Number of adverts for Chapter 9 that I've spotted, it gets in 2 sets. I caught at least 5. I mean, it may differ from person to person, just a bit of the FYI there. The name of this particular chapter is A Tale Involving a Tree. Now, the question here, did my initial opinion on this change since the initial viewing on Crunchyroll? And that is a big no, for the most part. Now, this does a little bit of a twist here, and that is it starts off with the debut of Summer Rose, RWBY's mother. Now, we figure, it's like, what I noticed here in this particular beginning is like, some of what led up to Summer Rose's fate. Summer Rose's fate. And a part of me still feels that RWBY hasn't been told the entire story. But there's also another part of me that RWBY's going to find out more information. And she's probably going to be confronting some people about it if she gets the chance to do so. Now, I do feel that the perspective of Weiss, Blake, Yang, and John, I think for them it's back to square one. Now they see the gems that were once part of the previous village. It's just like they came back better. And then John's realizing his selfishness kind of like prevented that from happening. It's like they wanted to like go to the tree. It's like it's not bad, rebirth. It's just something that, you know, John was too blinded by. And I feel that Pyrrha, like her memory is kind of like preventing him from seeing that. If that makes any sense. Now, pertaining to RWBY's newest Trial by Fire here, it's just a matter of like, one has to question, is it inspired by the remainder of the team? And something tells me yes, because you have to remember, like certain things that RWBY was questioned on that Yang never bothered, you know, saying anything about until Yang herself questioned RWBY. So we have to remember, Blake was the one who questioned RWBY in sense of like about the reason to be a huntress, the reason, like identity. Then you have here Weiss. She questioned RWBY's ability to lead a team. And fortunately for Weiss owned up to her screw up like almost immediately. Now you have to remember, Blake's the one who Yang was the one who questioned RWBY's decision making. And it was at that point in the start of Volume 8 where people were questioning Yang. So even if we see more of RWBY, we may see that we're probably going to be seeing a trial by fire inspired by Yang's questioning of RWBY's decisions. And I remember seeing the beginning of volume 8. It's just like, Blake is like, I think she's starting to question her. I feel that was where Blake may have been questioning her feelings for Yang. Who really knows at this point? Now, a couple of things here, because I'm looking at my notes here. So this is the notebook right here, where my notes have been. Now, once I'm done with this entire video, I'm probably going to be using it for other things. So just keep that in mind. So, the whole thing with Yang's line from the beginning of this volume 9, chapter 1, saying that RWBY was like, she wasn't supposed to be in Ever After. Now, RWBY, we do know, RWBY eventually meets up with the tree. And the tree was wasn't expecting her for some time. But it's just like, sometimes it has people thinking, Yang was actually right about one item, and that is RWBY not supposed to be in Ever After for a while. Even though we know RWBY's response to that whole thing. Now, pertaining the perspectives of RWBY, should she come back, again, this is a potential team split, because you're talking about the perspective differing between each person. It's like, Wise was saying, hey, we have to accept RWBY's decision, what she comes back as. And then you have Yang was like worrying, being a pessimist. It's like, she may not come back as herself, so on and so forth. Then Blake, I could not get a read on. But it's like, I think Weiss's attitude about this overall is a lot better than Yang's. And I could see why Weiss is an ideal de facto leader should RWBY not be present for any reason. Is that Weiss knows how to think. She knows what to do. Has an idea of how to plan. Yang, not really so much. Now, I think with Yang's grief, over what happened to RWBY in chapter 8, just is I think it's just she's doing the right thing, but just she should have seen this, she should have paid more attention to the family. And I think Yang might be blaming herself for this. Now, another thing here, I guess I'm looking at my notes. So, when Curious Cat confessed what happened to Alex, it's now we have a confirmed fate. So we know Alex is dead. Now, there's another potential confirmed fate, and I had to really pay a little bit, somewhat close attention to it. So, I noticed and this is pertaining the same type to RWBY and the tree, is that RWBY sees Summer's weapons. So we now have a bit of a confirmed fate that Summer is most likely dead. Now, what we see, next to Summer's weapon is something that resembles a mace of sorts. Now, the mace comes from a character we haven't seen from the Beacon era, and that is Cardin Winchester. So, I think that he is dead. Because it's when it comes down to, a television program or a program of any kind where it's how to confirm somebody's dead or not, it's it's either a body or a confirmed fate. And for Cardin, I am leaning towards the latter on this one, the confirmed fate, because we see what looks like his mace when RWBY meets up with the tree. So I think that Cardin Winchester died. Now, once we get to chapter 10 and even the bonus episode, I'll get into a little bit more on why I think we have a confirmed fate on Cardin Winchester, that he is dead. So on that, another thing about Rooster Teeth, all that stuff, so pertaining to Volume 9, there have been questions tied to the budget. Because people have been criticizing Rooster Teeth on this to no end pertaining to Volume 9. It's like a lot of cuts were made, a lot more so than ever. Now, this is not the first time Rooster Teeth has made this type of decision, because you have to remember in Volume 6, they had to do the same thing, doing some varying cuts. Reducing the number of episodes midway through. So it's like, for Rooster Teeth not to do that good for this much time, it's like, was the writing on the wall for Rooster Teeth and or RWBY since Volume 6? I mean, was it really worth dragging the show on for 3 more volumes, only for Rooster Teeth to shut down completely? Was it really worth it? I mean, these are just questions I'm just asking. And rhetorical ones, too. So, that's that on that. And then the whole line of, it's not, I'm getting here. It's not a place you go. It's a place you know. So it's like, it's going to be interesting to see how the revisiting of this volume is, in my opinion. So once I come back, it should be chapter 10 of volume 9. Wolvie here, I'm back on, this is the second to last segment of RWBY Chapter 9 Revisited. This is Chapter 10, the last chapter in the entire volume that we know of, because the last segment is going to be a bit of a multi-part in one, but we're going to focus on Chapter 10 here. It is Of Solitude Itself. My opinion on this has changed very, very, very slightly in certain regards, but not really. So it's not enough to say, yes, it's a very slight change, but it doesn't really have much of enough of a change to really flip that to a yes. Now, a few things to note here. So there are a couple of sets of adverts. I mean, you really couldn't keep up, because again, it's just like where you're watching this from a computer or mobile device. It could be anywhere between 4 or 5 total adverts. So that's on that. For this particular finale is Of Solitude Itself. That's the name of the thing, just to reiterate. And any opinion here is mine and mine alone, by the way. This particular finale, it's like, since the length of the overall episode, it's actually the longest in the entire series. It's about 20 something minutes long, and that's excluding, the credit stuff and the intro. So it's about 20 something minutes long. So it's a little bit longer than the rest when you take out the credits and the intro. Now, it does continue where like the regarding the whole aspect of the fight between Weiss, Blake, Yang, John versus Curious Cats / Neo at first, and then you had to change your perspective to RWBY and all that stuff. But we see, so that's the whole overall gist of it. However, it starts off with more information on what happened to Summer. Meaning that Raven was the last person with her. Summer did not tell the truth, but there was one particular line saying, "I love you just the way you are." And I mean, she didn't, it's like the way she looked at RWBY and Yang, it's just like it's kind of, there's a slight difference between the two. I mean, it could potentially be seen as potential favoritism, but it's something we will never know. And that, but again, that's just my personal opinion on that matter. But anyway, so RWBY knows RWBY knows it's like the last person who was with Summer was Raven. So Raven, like I said before in a previous video, Raven definitely knows what happened to Summer. And certain aspects of like Raven in Volume 5, where she spoke with Weiss and Yang on certain things, it's just like, that's pretty much the go-to, the person you want to ask about that sort of thing. Now, there is a, I think I mentioned this a little while ago, where there was a big time controversy for the overall aspect of Volume 9. And again, some like budgeting, things being cut, the animation team, being let go. That's just pretty much one of the few things. I did mention here a potential confirmed fate for Carden. Now, the reason why I think he's dead is because you see Summer's axe, that's her weapon, and then you see something that resembles a mace right next door to it. Right next door to it, like that mace, I know Carden Winchester had that type of weapon on him. So like I said, I think he's dead. I think he got killed, because he may have stayed behind a beacon. And regarding the bonus scene, that's coming next. So overall, I do feel that Weiss was really proving her worth. I gotta get some water here. As an excellent de facto leader for when RWBY was gone. So Weiss was really proving her worth. It's like she had plans here and there and everywhere, and in the right ways for the right reasons. Now, Jean had a couple of moments here and there in sense of like going after the tree. And it was because of that, the whole thing with Jean and the tree. And we're not talking the person they meet, and it's like actual trees. Like that's how they were able to separate Curious Cat from Neo. And the reason why I say this is because we saw how Neo reacted back in Chapter 8. Now, with that bit out of the way, I'm looking at my notes here. So, I do feel there was a pseudo-ascension for Jean. And the reason why that is because after the fight against Curious Cat, he goes back to his natural self. So I say it's a pseudo-ascension, meaning that some of those leaks were right in some parts, but not completely right. And I will be addressing that just a little bit. The leaks. Now, I am going over here. And it looks like I may have addressed almost everything. Now, for the post-credit scene for here was actually a trailer for their crossover between RWBY and Justice League. So it's like, there was a bit of a controversy over there. People were like whining about it, but the whining was not justified because at the time, Volume 10 was not confirmed yet. It's still not confirmed. We don't even know if we will ever see a Volume 10 because of what's going on with Rooster Teeth. So does it make any sense for anybody to complain about something that they don't have? And one of the reasons of that being that they don't have an animation team. So it's a lost cause to try to complain about something that they don't have. Now, I'm going to be taking a few minutes away here. I got to get some more water in my system, so I'm going to be concluding the video when I come back. Okay, I am back. Now, this is the finale of this entire video. Now, this is going to be more than an hour long. It's probably be, I wouldn't be surprised if this is closer to 2 hours. So, fortunately, once I get this posted, I'll make sure that in the description below, there's going to be some timestamps. So that way you guys get to look at certain things on your own time. Now, the ending here for this particular video is going to be not addressing a few things. My overall view of the volume, instead of me revisiting it, has my overall opinion changed. To the extended scene, all that stuff. 3, varying things I've been hearing here and there, like about the controversies, the decision making, and 4, what I think what's probably going to be done with RWBY. It's a little bit of like an update on that sort of thing. So for the extended scene, now you can watch this on Rooster Teeth for free on their website. Now, Murder Birds, I know he has something on his YouTube channel with that scene, his reaction to it. I forgot that chick's name. I know she is a Bumblebee shipper. I know she has something along the lines with the extended scene, that sort of thing. That's just for starters. I wouldn't be surprised if more content creators, address it in their own way. I will mention that in the beginning of the extended scene, Eddie and Carrie, have their introduction, that sort of thing. Now the extended scene, they were mentioning about like a future episode of the volume, or even volume 10, if it weren't for the cuts. So they have their own little monologue there, or dialogue, however you want to put it. So we're just gonna go with that, and we're just gonna jump straight into the extended scene. Now, for those of you who may remember that at the last RTX, which was a year ago, there is pretty much, that the scene then, what we're seeing now on the website is an extension. So there's a lot more going on than what we've seen a year ago. Now, at first, this was only going to be available to those with first membership, which was like a bit of like a sucker punch, unwarranted. Not necessary, considering that Rooster Teeth is going under soon. And when it was originally there just for first members, it was a complete lost cause because of timing of the Rooster Teeth going under decision. Now, again, some YouTubers have it on their channel, so something we may, that's probably the only way you're probably going to be avoiding adverts, but to each his own, c'est la vie. Now, I'm just going to go over certain aspects of the extension scene itself. So we have here, Winter, she's still alive. Had to sneeze there, so that way, things come out. So Winter's still alive. She uses her powers to get as many people to safety as possible. Then we have here the whole thing with Nora, the remainder, her and Ren, along with Emerald, Oscar, everybody that survived. Got some of the remaining members of Team Funky. You also have Team Sun, Team Coffee. You see, who is it? I'm trying to think here. Coco. Coco's the one who shows up, try to, help people out. Crow, Robin and her crew. You have Willow, Whitley, Klein, all those people. Then you have an appearance by some of the Beacon professors. Now, we do know here, and this is a bit of a spoiler, so we do know that Beacon and Vale are destroyed completely. Now, Glinda left, but her fate from that extended scene is left up to the viewer. Because we do know that she is gone, but we don't know if she's dead. And another thing that comes up as to being open-ended is, how many relics does Salem have? Does she really have 3? Or is the Beacon one still being heavily guarded? So it's a little bit of an open-ended on that regard. Now, pertaining to Oscar, there's that merger. And it looks like if there was a continuation of the show, Volume 10 and beyond, we're probably going to be seeing an Odger of Oscar. He becomes the new Oz. And we're also probably going to be seeing, his individual semblance showing up. Because there was a hint from a while back saying that the staff that Oscar's wielding now has a few more tricks up its sleeve, so to speak. Now, regarding the whole thing with Robin and her crew, there's this whole thing, saying remember her message. They did their tribute to RWBY because, they were moved by it. It's just like, yo, we gotta work together. We gotta put our differences aside. Now, I'm going to go into Raven in a little bit, so I'm just going into my notes here. So, I do feel that there is an endgame romance coming along. The endgame involves RWBY and Oscar. Now, this is one of those things that's like I'm starting to think about. I think there's like potential hints of, an endgame romance for Oscar and RWBY, which could really divert the whole romance from Blake and Yang. But it's a bit of a wait and see. Now, another thing here is that on Remnant, it looks like there's a bit of a time gap. But we don't know how much time has passed on Remnant, to be sure. And, besides all that, Whitley was just like, telling his mother, it's like, I can't hide who I am forever. So he's facing, his identity, all of that, with his head held high. Something that what Weiss would have wanted. And then Winter was given Weiss a certain type of praise where it's just like, who the Schnees really are. They're not Jacques. It's like, Weiss is the embodiment of the Schnee name in the sense of like what they truly stood for. The good people, not the evil that Jacques has done. Even though we had some the common folk, berating Willow. And then with Crow, it's like he's like reminiscing about the time he hung out with Clover. Now, when it comes to like the memorial for the people of like for RWBY and Jean, it's just like we know that RWBY was talked about, Jean was talked about, and Weiss was talked about. Now we see the team as a whole being talked about, but there's no real mentioning of Blake or Yang individually. Meaning that another potential hit of a team split, because you only had 2 people being mentioned by varying characters. The team as a whole along with Jean. But there's no individual sections for Blake or Yang. And that kind of raises some degree of concern, in my personal opinion. So, that's on that. I do feel that if there were a continuation of the show, we're probably going to be seeing a redemption arc of sorts for both Raven and Whitley. Because we started seeing some signs of it in Volume 8 for Whitley. Not really the case for Raven. But what I will say in Raven's defense, it's just like she was barely in the show at all. And with that aspect out of the way, the fact that Raven was able to find them, I think Weiss somehow managed to convince Raven to get her act together, to start doing the right thing. And then for Raven, knowing that she has a connection with Yang of all people, Raven probably said that she knew that Yang was with the rest of the team, and somehow used her semblance to bring them back. Which is part of how the ending of volume, either the ending of volume 9 or early on of volume 10. And then Crow was mentioning about how RWBY's message was able to reach the world. And the world answered. So something tells me that Glinda saw RWBY's message and was able to get everybody. But I feel that Glinda is still MIA. We still don't know if she's alive. But I think Glinda was like the one who managed to get some of the other kingdoms involved despite a lack of communication. Now, with all that bit out of the way, I'm going to check the time. I'm actually trying to get this up here so that way I can see it. So with that, all that out of the way, so we do know that Rooster Teeth is going under soon. Now, RWBY is one of the varying amounts of IPs or intellectual properties that's being shopped around. So we simply don't know who's going to take over. Some people are saying Crunchyroll is probably the best candidate. However, if you remember the numbers on Crunchyroll, they're not good. It only peaked at Volume 9, Chapter 6, but it went back down after that as far as I'm aware. Now, with the company that does wind up getting RWBY and the entire intellectual property, we're probably going to be seeing a potential overhaul of a redo. Meaning that new writers, new animation team, and a potential redo from scratch. Volume 1. So we're probably going to be seeing that depending on who gets the IP. And with Warner Brothers, their decision making, that's on them. Now, there's something that's not in my notes that I want to address here because it has some degree of common ground, and that's a program known as Supergirl. Now, that program did not last long because I think it was one of the final seasons. I forgot which one it is. I had to look into it a little bit. So Supergirl did something, kind of similar to RWBY by, the phrase going woke, getting broke. Known as go woke, go broke, it was go woke, go broke. Something like that. Yeah. So basically what happened to Supergirl is like, they decided to change things around with a sense of romance development, and then didn't take long for Supergirl to get canceled after 6 seasons. Now, the whole thing with RWBY is pretty much the same deal. Is that they went woke, and unfortunately they've been losing money ever since. So sometimes it's not a good idea to put political beliefs into your television programs. Regardless if you watch it on an actual television screen or a computer screen. And it's because not everybody's going to agree with it. And then you have certain programs that reach a worldwide audience. So it's like, are they going to be as accepting of it as you claim? That's the thing where it's like you have to know your audience. You have to really read the room. And it's just like, it's kind of sad where it's like you have decision makings that lead to things like this happening. And I just wish, the people behind RWBY would have had a better read of the room. Because when it came to some of the last episodes at this point, Miles Luna is probably the only reason why the show didn't go under sooner. Because he had a better idea of what to write, how to write, than the remainder of the writers for the show. That's just my opinion on the matter. And the fact that there were people who will label people who don't support this as homophobic over a difference of opinion, it's very extreme. Being that you're using a fictional show with fictional characters as it being reason enough to label this or that over a difference of opinion. I speak on that from personal experience because I've been labeled homophobic by a couple of very toxic Bumblebee shippers when I was, keyword was because I no longer ship anything for RWBY since, I was labeled homophobic because I was shipping Weiss and Yang, which is very hypocritical because you're talking about a rare pairing of 2 females. It's like, it makes 0 sense. It really does. It really makes 0 sense. So, with that, my final thoughts on the matter, just like, it's going to come down to who takes over the intellectual property and what gets done with it. With that being said, if it goes into novels to finish the original story, then it would probably be for the best that way. Because you don't have to worry about animation team. You have scripts to go along with it. And whoever writes the books, it's like they have pretty much creative freedom at this point. And that's all I have for this video. With Wolfie here signing off, finally. I will catch you all on the flip side.